All right, folks, welcome to Remodelers on the Rise. It's your friend Kyle. If you're watching the video version, a little bit of different background. I'm actually at home today. Our little kids, their school is used for local elections. Therefore, on a random Tuesday, they get to be home. Little did they know that as I am working from home this fine day, I am doing a coaching call. There's a little bit of a break, and we are taking leaves and we are hauling them over to the woods. And talk about a productive day. Does it get any better than having a little bit of laundry going, the dishwasher going, productive business going, and leaf pickup on a random Tuesday in November? It's about as good as it gets, folks. I have been accused of being a bit of a productivity snob, productivity over the top. I just kind of like being productive and having multiple things going at the same time. Some of you are nodding your head like, that's awesome. Some of you are like, simmer down, dude. Anyways, I'm not going to simmer down because I'm talking about one of my favorite topics today. That is the topic of job costing. Don't panic, people. Don't click off this. Job costing is your friend. Why would somebody that's been doing coaching for 15 plus years, working at this point with, I suppose, a few hundred remodelers, why would I say this is one of my favorite topics? The reason it is because when we are not doing job costing well, when we don't have a solid system in place, versus when we do have a solid job costing system in place, there are few dials you can adjust in your remodeling business that has a bigger impact. When you get your job costing dialed in and are able to see your numbers very, very clearly, it has a positive ripple effect throughout your business. So if I may, I'm going to take this podcast today to just go through, that rhymed. If I may, I'm going to take this podcast today to just go through the basic structure of a good job costing system to hopefully motivate, give you clarity, give you some encouragement on how it all works. All right. So simply put, a job costing system, what we're talking about is having a clear system and process to understand what is your expected cost and gross profit on an individual project, and what is your actual cost and gross profit on an individual project. That is what job costing is. Let me go through that again real quick. Job costing. What is your expected cost, tallying up all of my labor, all of my materials, all of my trade partners, based on my estimate, what is my expected cost and gross profit? Talk about that in a minute. On an individual project versus what is your actual cost and gross profit on an individual project. That's what we're talking about. This is a very, very, very key way you can make more money in your remodeling business. I would argue there's 3, maybe 5, maybe 6% or more gross profit margin, gross profit dollars sitting out there for you to find and to grab. And the thing that always gets me is if I'm not dialed in with my job costing, and I get a system in place where I'm watching my job costing much more closely, and I'm reducing what we call slippage, where slippage is it's costing you more than what you were expecting. Your gross profit is getting eaten into. When we fix that, that could be worth $20,000 for you this year, maybe even 40, maybe even 60,000. But the thing that is so cool about improving aspects of your business is if you can get your job costing system in place and it saves you $40,000 in slippage, it helps you increase your gross profit this year. The beautiful thing about that is each and every year you are going to have plugged that leak. You're going to have plugged that hole on your boat. So fixing this can be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. So dial into this, Job costing ripples into your estimating. When we're watching our job costing closely, it helps us become better estimators. When I'm watching my job costing closely and I had 20 labor hours in there for demo, and I look and I see that's what my expected labor hours for demo were and my actual is 30, I have a few things to consider there. Number one, just knowing the difference between those two is very valuable. Now, was it on the estimating side? Was I an optimistic estimator? And did I underappreciate how long this was going to take? Was my team just dragging their feet and they're slower than molasses? Maybe it's a combination. Often it's a combination. But when you look at your plumbing, expected cost versus actual, labor, materials, trade partners, when we watch that closely, we become better estimators. We fix certain things for our next time we're estimating. Very important of job costing. It gives you confidence in selling. When you know that you need to be selling at this type of gross profit margin, this type of markup and margin, you put a price in front of somebody and you know, I need to sell it at that amount to make all of my overall numbers work. Job costing helps you build confidence in that. Job costing gives you clarity on where your money is going. You can much more clearly see all of the money coming in and all of the money going out. You can clearly see grippage where we're making more in gross profit dollars than what we were expecting. And you can clearly see slippage where we're making less in gross profit dollars than what we were expecting. Job costing also, geez, Kyle, how many things does it do for us? A lot. Another thing job costing does is it shows you which projects are the most or least profitable. Don't tell me that a deck project, deck projects, we don't do very well on those. Well, tell me more. What do you mean by that? Is your margin less on that? Do you have a lot of slippage on that? Is your gross profit different on those than kitchens or bathrooms? Well, yeah, kind of, sort of. No. Job costing, show me the numbers. When you are dealing with the facts of the numbers, you start to make decisions and you can see much more clearly what your most profitable projects are versus your least. That's what a smart remodeler does. That's what a remodeler on the rise does. Holy cow, job costing does a lot. All right. So some of the ways that you may be doing this now, you could be using Excel and kind of pulling the data together from different places. You could be using JobTread or BuilderTrend or CoConstruct or another project management software to be looking at your expected cost versus your actual, your expected gross profit versus your actual. A lot of you may be using QuickBooks. QuickBooks Desktop has some good job costing capabilities to it. QuickBooks Online has some good job costing capabilities to it. If you're using the online version, you need to upgrade to the one, what's it called? Might be QuickBooks Pro. It's kind of in that $80, $90 a month range, but it has the feature called projects. If you're using QuickBooks Online, that is the key to job costing in QuickBooks Online, is having projects available. So there's a lot of different ways that you can pull the information together. So let me pause there and just think about that. What program, what method are you using to do your job costing? How is that working for you? What are some things that you need to do to make sure that the data you need is in the system where you need it? That could be related to how you're tracking your labor hours. That could be related to making sure all of your material purchases, all of your trade partners are getting tagged to a specific job. There's going to be some things that you need to do to wrangle your systems and dial in your systems so that you can clearly see your expected cost versus your actual. Just think about that for a second. What do you need to do related to that system that you're using? Okay. Now, this is just a crash course, a little bit of a crash course on it. I'll tell you how you can get more training on this if you so need it. But the other thing I wanted to talk about as I'm just trying to encourage and motivate and offer some clarity on job costing is just to talk about the pieces that you need in order to be able to do your job costing. So I'll list out kind of 4 areas. So one of the pieces you need is your expected cost and gross profit. Excuse me. When it comes to labor, materials, and trade partners. Expected cost and gross profit when it comes to labor, materials, and trade partners. So when it comes to labor, I should be able to look at my estimate and see my expected cost on labor. Most likely what this is your full employee labor burden. That number is important. Kyle, I don't know what you mean by full employee labor burden. Then you need to get some training on that. I have training related to that. But you've got to have, for an in-house employee, you have to have their labor rates, the amount you're paying them per hour, their payroll taxes, vacation time, gas maybe, insurance, workers' comp. There's all these things that take that $25 that you're paying them and moves it up to $45, let's say, of per hour full labor burden cost. When we look at our expected cost on labor, we want that full labor burden amount. We need to do some work to get that number. We need to make sure we can see how many labor hours that we are expecting on this project. Okay. So for example, if I have a $50 an hour full labor burden and I have 180 labor hours, I'll do the math for you. $50 per hour times 180 labor hours, that equals a cost of $9,000. It equals a cost of $9,000. Now, if I have a markup of, let's say, 1.56, that equals just about a 36% margin. Well, Kyle, you lost me again. You just mentioned markup and margin. I did. You need to understand that. You might need some training on that. I can help you with that. But if I take that $9,000 cost times 1.56, I am selling that labor, those 180 hours, for $14,040. So I know what my expected cost is. I know what I'm selling it for. And when I take that 14,000 and change minus 9,000, I have a gross profit of just over $5,000. Again, income, what I'm selling it for, 14,000 minus labor cost of 9,000 equals $5,000 of gross profit. That is my expected cost for labor and my expected gross profit on labor. Ooh, we're cooking with gas now, aren't we? Does that make sense? Anybody have questions on that? Feel free to reach out. Okay, so that's the labor piece. The materials piece is even kind of simpler. What is my cost? I should be able to easily see my expected cost on materials, lining all that up, adding all that up. And then I have my cost times my markup or my margin. So I have my selling price minus my cost of materials equals my gross profit on materials. Are you able to see that clearly in your estimating? Can you see your expected cost and your expected gross profit for materials? And then the same thing for trade partners, your plumber, your electrician, your drywaller, your tile person. You have all of those costs. You have your markup or margin on top of that. And you can see, based on your selling price for that trade partner work minus your cost equals your gross profit. So this first piece, expected cost and gross profit for labor, materials, and trade partners. Very important. There may be some work for you to do there. You may need to be wrangling your systems. You may need to be tracking that closer. That's what this is about. The second piece is expected in-house labor hours. I gave you that example of $50 for a full labor burden cost times 180 labor hours. Can you see very clearly how many expected labor hours you have on that kitchen project? Yes or no? Sometimes you're lumping in materials with labor and we're already off to a very confusing start. We need to be able to separate out and clearly see the number of labor hours that you have on a project. What gets measured gets improved. If I can see my expected labor hours on that kitchen and I can measure that and I can track that, oh baby, am I off to a great start on being able to see my job costing. And going back to the start of this, that is going to enable me to be a better estimator, a more confident salesperson, and doggone it, a more profitable remodeler. Folks, your friend Kyle here, coaching for 15 plus years, coaching a lot of remodelers. If you don't have your job costing dialed in, this is priority 1 and 1A. By being able to see this, it opens your eyes and you can clearly see where the money is going, where your holes are on the boat. Okay? So expected labor hours. And then we simply need to be able to see your actual. So we cover your expected cost and gross profit on labor, materials, and trade partners. Number 1. Number 2, your expected in-house labor hours. And then number 3 here, your actual cost and gross profit. We just talked about, can we see our expected cost and gross profit for labor, materials, and trade partners? Now we just need to be able to see our actual cost and gross profit for our labor, materials, and trade partners. That means if an invoice comes in and it is from your plumber and it is for $3,500, when that gets entered into your system, whatever system that might be, that expense needs to be tagged and attached to that specific project so that when I run my job cost report on my actual cost, I see all of my trade partners related to this project. I see all of my materials related to this project, and related to labor. When we're tracking our time and our hours, those are also attached and tagged to that project. I need to be able to see piece by piece my actual cost and therefore my gross profit on labor, materials, and trade partners. You can do this. You might have to dig in, but you can do this. And then fourth, let's see your actual in-house labor hours. How does that compare? You had 180 labor hours on this project. I'm so excited. What was your actual? Was it 180? Was it 160? Did you actually come in under hours? Was it 240? Did you come in 60 labor hours over your expected labor hours? 60 times $50 full labor burden per hour. That's $3,000 of slippage on your labor if that was the case. We need to fix that. We need to work on that. It's going to be a combination of better estimating, of better project management, of doing more upfront planning and work so that jobs run smoother. We can fix that. But first, you need to see the numbers in front of you. If you're a remodeler who's not as profitable as you'd like to be, perhaps you need to be selling more. Perhaps you need to be producing a greater volume. But so often, it comes down to dialing in your job costing. Cool. A few odds and ends for you as I kind of round third, head for home on this little job costing overview for you. What gets measured gets improved. Remember that. Junk in and junk out. If you have incomplete data, if your team is not tracking their labor hours against specific projects, if you go to Home Depot and you're buying materials for 3 projects and you're not taking the time to make sure that out of that $1,000 invoice, that 400 is getting allocated to the Smith project, 300 to Jones, etc., it's going to be junk in, junk out. Take the time to track your expenses clearly so that the job costing is clearly. Another odd and end. Do you think really profitable remodelers do solid job costing? Do you think those people that you see in my remodelers community, that you see in your NHB or NARI groups that you really respect, do you think they do solid job costing? Yes. Yes, they do. It is such a key to really having an understanding and knowing your numbers and running a profitable business. A couple other odds and ends. This does not have to be perfect. That we're not going for down to the penny, but it does need to be solid. We need to make sure that we have everything in there, but don't go too crazy in it. It doesn't need to be absolutely picture perfect. Another thing, you can do this. You can do this. Invest in job costing. Invest in the training to understand this, the people to help you with this. Put some money and time towards this. And work hard to keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate it. We don't need 60 different areas of our job costing. Don't overcomplicate it. Okay. And I had another odd and end that I was going to mention. Are you a professional remodeler? Then get your job costing rock solid. Come on, no more excuses. Let's do this. So that's a little review for you of the job costing side of things. Hopefully you heard some things in there that you're like, that's my Achilles heel. That's my weak area. I need to dial that in. If so, get to work and let's get after it. If you are a little confused related to the markup and margin I mentioned, related to the employee labor burden I mentioned, or just overall, how do I get this job costing system in place? I have training related to that. I've got some really nice pre-recorded training. I've got some live training that happens throughout the year. So feel free to reach out and we can point you in the right direction to a resource to get you improving in this area. Rock and roll. It's time to pull another giant tarp of leaves. Got my buddy Andy. It's good to have, we moved into this house a couple years ago, and I've got a good friend of mine that's kind of kitty corner to us. Good news is he's kitty corner to us, and he's got a big woods, and we have our pile in the back that we put things on. I'm kind of on a corner lot, so I don't really have any place to put all the leaves. The bad news is it's kind of a stinking long hike when you're pulling a lot of leaves to get through my yard, get over the road. He's got like an uphill front yard, so I got to pull it up the front And then once I get to the top of his front yard, then it's all downhill, which helps. So I'm going to go do that. You're going to go get your job costing dialed in, or reach out to us at Remodelers on the Rise if you need help. And have a wonderful rest of your week. Be well. Catch you later.